Are we ready? Can we hit it now? All right, recording.
Hey everybody, it's Laura Eisenhower. I am joined by some very profound individuals that have a great knowledge base in astrology. And, it's going to be an amazing discussion to just, kind of see, where the common threads are, or where we can all kind of learn from each other and integrate, this greater knowledge, being individuals that have, learned about the patternings of the stars. So I just first, before I introduce you all with a bit of a bio, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, such a pleasure, Laura.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. It's a real honor.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Laura.
Yeah, and I've heard about you guys. Adam's been a friend of mine for a really long time, and he exposed me to you guys. And I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled. I've had, I just want to kind of warn people, like a little warning. The last 2 weeks have emotionally kicked my butt. And it's not like I'm fear-based, but just processing through a lot of stuff. And maybe, I'll touch upon that as far as, your thoughts about how people are being sucked into consenting to a very dark part of the agenda and what that might mean. I mean, obviously one would need to look at their own personal astrology charts, but what we're up against. I mean, I want to talk about the Saturn square Uranus that's going to be happening, till at least 2023. We got a new moon in Aquarius this week. And I mean, there's so much to talk about, but let me just give you guys a little bit more familiarity, and we'll start with Sasha. Sasha is the founder of Venus Wisdom. She is an astrologer devoted to the awakening of our deepest heart knowing and full embodiment of our gifts at this epic time. Sasha is a lover of nature. She's a writer, storyteller, mother of a teen daughter, entrepreneur, and teacher. She has spent 20 years as an apprentice to sky and earth wisdom and the feminine mysteries. She draws upon her intuition and intimacy with nature, as well as studies of astrology, meditation, wellness, and studies of Montessori education. She earned her BA in Culture, Ecology, and Sustainable Communities and holds a CA teaching credential. She received a direct transmission of Venus Wisdom in 2012 when Venus visibly crossed the face of the sun. Oh my gosh, it's just been looking forward to meeting you so much. I was actually in Mount Shasta at College of the Siskiyous, which actually had a Mars training program attached to it. But the synchronicities that worked out that day, I was able to look through a telescope. That's the right word, right?
Yes.
Of Venus literally passing over the sun. And that was super powerful. Man. So grateful that you're here with us.
Glad to be
and
here.
Thank you. And yeah, Adam and I have been buddies for a really long time. And so let me tell you about him. Adam Sanchez has been practicing astrology, yoga, meditation, and healing practices for over 20 years. His training includes 2010 Yoga Works teacher training, 2011 personal training certification, 2011 astrology training / study. Adam's dedication to understanding his craft is evident in his professionalism, shared knowledge, and highly specialized skill sets. A lot of his articles have been posted on Stillness in the Storm, and right on. Holistic healer. Adam became a private chef to serve his clients' changing needs and to educate on the importance of a balanced alkaline diet for healing and vital nutrition. Graciously, this experience gave him the sufficient tools to heal a lifetime of health challenges, culminating in the reversal and full healing of stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma at the age of 31, a mere 18 months after its diagnosis. I mean, that's major. Beginning in young adulthood, Adam actively sought out his spiritual awakening, traveling extensively throughout Europe, India, and Peru. He was blessed to learn from a variety of spiritual mentors and masters as he, oh, and then it cuts off. I mean, there's so much, the bios are, I mean, like, these are like super profound souls. I'm so honored to be with you guys, but it cut off, and you can tell us more and whatever I didn't share, but let's talk about Ian Ferguson. He has spent his whole life seeking truth, both within and without. He had a spiritual awakening when he was 12 years old, and he saw the world was in some sense a dream, and he was being dreamed by the great dreamer. Oh, I want to ask you a lot about that. And I think, you know, we're definitely going to create some one-on-one interviews. But anyway, not long after, the hormones hit, and he went back into a safe state of unconsciousness for many years. Then when he was 24, he took a Religions of India class and read the Bhagavad Gita. One passage caused his spirit to vibrate like a struck bell, and it reads, this is a great quote: "Sword cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, air cannot wither it, water cannot drown it. This unbreakable soul that cannot be burned, dissolve in water, or dry up is surely everlasting, all-pervading, unchangeable, unmovable, and primordial." So when he read that passage, there was a deep resonance and a spark that came alive for him. This began a 20-year journey into the depths of his spiritual nature. It kicked off an era of exploration where he investigated many religions, spiritual practices, and also places on this earth. Traveling to over 27 countries, various sacred sites, as well as sites of terrible atrocities, he was in search of the true nature of the universe. He became a Reiki master and learned a great deal about Western astrology, working with chakras and many other techniques and sacred knowledge. Oh man, I mean, it just goes on, and it's like, I want to read the whole thing, and it's just like so amazing. And I know you're going to bring more of, I mean, I hope I've been balanced in like how much of a bio that I would read from you guys, but it's just like, you know, it goes on and on. I mean, and I'm honored to be with such incredible spiritual warriors that have learned the language of astrology and can demystify, I think, and I know a lot of people's maybe apprehension or resistance towards like understanding this sort of system. And we're in a very polarized world where, you know, this is good, this is bad, this is evil. But I mean, how can self-knowledge and understanding all that we are made of be a detriment? And I don't know who wants to, you know, raise their hand first, but, you know, in your pursuit of this level of knowledge, I mean, what do you think or can say in the face of those that put this massive projection on it, like casting it as a pseudoscience, or, you know, there's something dangerous about it? I mean, to me, it's a part of that greater programming to avoid self-knowledge. I mean, to me, astrology helps us to really connect to the fullness of all we are. I mean, so I just want to kind of go around and like, you know, kind of hear first, like how this journey has been for you, and, you know, maybe what you went through in standing your ground to bring this important science, which to me is greater than the dead sciences we learn in elementary school and high school and college and universities, which to me is very much about indoctrination. So I don't know who wants to raise your hand first. I'm a Libra, so I can't make choices very well, you know, talking about astrology. So anybody want to raise your hand? Like, you know, just share a little bit about, you know, your journey and like standing your ground and honoring this as a really legitimate, you know, science in terms of our awakening and getting in touch with self-knowledge, which to me neutralizes and obliterates mind control. So and maybe we'll start with you, Sasha.
Yeah,
Let's kind of
sure.
go around.
Love this question. And it's interesting because I grew up in a very alternative reality. I was raised in an international spiritual community. So there was a lot of, you know, I I very much wanted as a younger person to fit in, you know, because I lived in this very unusual situation. And so, you know, as I grew up and came of age and began studying astrology, it was always a side thing that I did. And it definitely, I struggled with the legitimacy of it until I had that direct experience, you know, with when Venus crossed the face of the sun, and it just like empowered me within to really bring that it could be my offering. You know, it was always like something I did on the side of these other more legitimate nonprofit management and teaching and, you know, real jobs. And so it was more an inside job as far as me giving myself permission to just go for it. And I think we're in an age where astrology is going to be used by more people. There's going to be the whole reputation of astrology is going to be elevated in the age of Aquarius. And we're just the first wave of that. So it wasn't a big struggle once I decided that I wanted to do it and I brought it forth. Then I was only met with encouragement, you know, from the people around me. So I didn't have a real, you know, struggle with publicly people saying, oh, that's weird. It was more my internal, you know, battle with myself that I finally broke through. So I'm doing this.
Wow, gosh, yeah, right? Totally. I mean, that to me is the ultimate breakthrough, when it's not about what other people project or what their belief systems are. If it resonates and it creates like a feeling of wellness and understanding, connection, discernment, greater knowledge. I mean, to me, that is what the Great Awakening is all about. It's not like, oh, just understand conspiracies or, you know, the dark part of it. It's like, let's get in touch with the knowledge. Let's get to know ourselves and what we're truly made of. And yeah, what a beautiful breakthrough. So yes, thank you for sharing that. So I don't know, like I said, I anybody want to?
I'll make it easy for you. Why don't you go ahead, Ian?
All right. You want to go ahead?
Okay, so I think Adam said that he was offering me to take the next turn.
Cool.
Very generous of him.
Yes, that's right.
So, can you remind me of the specifics of the question? I was so enthralled with Sasha's story, I forgot the specific question.
Well, just the whole journey of getting in touch with astrology and
absolutely.
how it's been projected upon, and how some people are like, yeah, they're curious about it, but it might just be a newspaper clipping of like, you know, their horoscope for the week, or kind of astrology. And just where there's a lot of projection that it's a pseudoscience, and how you might have broken through some of those stigmas to be true to the fact that this is seriously legit. And what would you say is the most important part of it that kind of keeps you engaged in keeping up with the stars and doing charts for people?
Yeah. So I like you read in that bio, I had a really profound spiritual awakening when I was about 12 years old, where I had this sudden strange thought of you know, I was like wondering, how do I know that I'm not dreaming right now? And, you know, a lot of people have this thought, but then I thought, or what if I'm not even the dreamer? What if someone else is dreaming me? And I imagined it in my little kid brain of an astronaut that had tumbled out of the space shuttle and was tumbling through the cosmos and kind of had lost their mind and then started to dream an entire reality. And I thought to myself, well, how do I know that that's not what's happening right now? And I looked up at this solid giant oak beam in the ceiling, and everything got kind of shimmery, and the whole world around me got kind of shimmery and almost pixelated or something like that. And I just knew suddenly with certainty that, you know, to use another Vedic saying, that the world is illusion. But I knew there was a realness behind that. So that beautiful piece of the Vedas goes, the world is illusion, Brahman alone is real, the world is Brahman. And most people, as you're saying, when we kind of had our pre-chat, a lot of people are still lost in the world being very, very real. And they never even question it at all. And so I think that questioning, that moment of questioning I had when I was 12, made me start to want to explore deeper levels. And eventually I started to have direct experiences, what I would call Gnostic experiences of a direct connection with source and with reality itself that had neither, was both form and formless, and is really ineffable and beyond words. But all of that faded until I then, as an adult, a young adult, read that passage in the Bhagavad Gita. And around that time, a friend of mine, actually a year or two before, had introduced me to Western astrology. And I was astonished by how accurate it was, especially in predicting people's personalities. And I studied Western astrology for quite a while. And then I met my son's mother, and she had grown up, and I was wondering about this when Sasha was talking about her background. She grew up in something called the Mahesh Yogi's Age of the School of Enlightenment. That was actually the Beatles guru, and he formed a school. Is it the same thing? No, Transcendental Meditation. Okay, Sasha's nodding no. Anyways, it's also known as the Transcendental Meditation Movement. And that was the man who was called the Giggling Guru, or the Beatles Guru. And he bought a failing party school in Fairfield, Iowa, of all places. Probably just because it was the cheapest piece of land that had all the facilities he wanted. And he formed a school that was based on Vedic texts. And so it had like Ayurvedic medicine, they taught Sanskrit, and they also taught a little bit about Vedic astrology. So when I met my son's mother, I was pretty resistant to it because I had been studying Western astrology for a long, long time. I then decided to look into Vedic astrology more, and I found that Vedic astrology is not particularly good at predicting personalities or relationships, but it's fantastic at predicting karmas. And I could see in it, among other things, that I had been an astrologer in a previous life. When I looked at my own chart, once I learned how to study Vedic astrology, my south node, which is known as Ketu in Vedic astrology, is in my 8th house, which means a past life that dealt with esoteric and metaphysical and potentially astrological subjects. And astrology just always came to me super intuitively. It just came to me really easily. I sometimes struggles with the science part of astrology, you know, where I have to go da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, which there is a lot of that in Vedic astrology. Let me tell you, there's at least as much, if not way more, than there is in Western astrology. But the part that came very intuitively and simply to me was the interpretation of being able to just look at the way the planets were arranged and think symbolically. And it would just come to me sometimes, and I couldn't really, you know, I couldn't tell you how I got there, but I found that it was really, it came to me quite simply. And when I started looking into Vedic astrology, and I started finding how incredibly accurate it was in predicting events, and like I could see, I broke my back in a car wreck when I was 19, and I can see that in my chart. It's crazy. And so that kind of thing, you know, I'm a very logical person. I'm very pro science. I agree with a lot of the indoctrination and academic white ivory tower, and also cabal, if you want to call it, since we've kind of opened the door for that. The kind of the people who want to run the world and move it in the direction that I think we're all concerned about. I see how science has been co-opted. I call it corporate science, to move it away from the idea of the scientific method, which I think is very beautiful and pure, towards a legitimization of ever increasing centralization and control. And so I think that where astrology has its real potency and power in this time, and then I want to hand it over to Adam because I've been talking for a bit, is that we have a real potential to, there's kind of a bifurcation, and we may go into this more later. There's a real separation that's happening in humanity right now. There's people who are moving towards this transhumanist nightmare control grid kind of reality. And there's people who are going kind of backwards in certain ways towards more traditionalism, not in an oppressive way, but in a way of honoring our ancestors and the wisdom of the ancients, and rediscovering that. Organic farming. Some of us were talking beforehand about some of the farming things we're doing. You know, Adam's incredible, beautiful healing journey, which I was astonished to hear the depth of it just now, and that's amazing. And so I think that by learning about our own soul's karmic destiny and what we're meant to do in this world, it can liberate us from the restraints of some of this unfolding sort of political nightmare that we see happening on a global scale right now. And that's the beauty, and that's the empowerment of it. It's about empowering the individual to actually not be at the whim of destiny, but take control and harness their abilities, their talents, and their spirit. And I think that's a perfect time to hand it to this beautiful spirit, Adam.
Oh, yes, yes. Just some thoughts. It's like, you know, astrology doesn't control us. We co-create with it. The planetary consciousness of every planet and every aspect, even if it's a square that represents challenge and conflict and friction. I mean, these are all the energetic climate terrains that we need to face in order to become strong, in order to reach the higher levels of what they represent. It's like, you know, a conversation can like injure people, or a conversation can enlighten. And the planetary aspects could be a certain way and be defined, you know, as being detrimental, but we do have the power within ourselves to raise that vibration, to turn that conflict and adversity into a source of strength. And that's kind of what I'm getting from what you just said, you know?
Absolutely. Beautifully said.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Adam, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are just how blown away I am by the genius of everyone here in this this group chat call. But as far as, to answer your question specifically, in my journey with astrology, I was always interested in it. I didn't realize, interestingly, Ian, you also mentioned the past life connection. I found out later, right around the time when I decided to do astrology professionally, that I actually had indicators in my chart that showed that I was likely already doing that in past lives. So I'm like, okay, well then let me kind of go into it, especially since I love it so much, and I had originally gotten one of those online chart readings where they just, put your data into the system and they generate this algorithmic, probably, read up. And I definitely saw and read some things in there that were very home hitting for me. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I was, just getting into college. I was focusing more on the academic route. I was going to be pre-med to do all this other stuff. I was very ambitious with my desires back then. So it was just kind of in the back of my mind. Now, fast forward a few years, as I, decided to go away from academia and more into the esoteric and the holistic and the Eastern traditions and energy healing. Barbara Brennan energy healing was a huge, huge pivotal shift for me in my direction of, where I wanted to go with my career once I realized that that was an opportunity or a possibility. And then it was a few years later, it was 2011, when I got my first natal chart reading done live by an actual professional astrologer. Shout out to Adam Ellenboss, who gave me this first reading where I actually cried during the reading, because he read to some things in my personality, things that I had been uncovering in the healing sessions with my Barbara Brennan healer, years before, that just activated me in ways, like the one in particular. He pointed out the conjunction between Venus and Mars that can show up in people's charts that I have in the sign of Leo in my midheaven. And so when we have Mars, the masculine, male, but it's also the divine masculine, it has that potential, right? And then Venus also has the same potential for the divine feminine. When we find them coming into union in the chart, whether it's a conjunction or some other, aspect that connects them, it can often indicate the unity between the masculine and the feminine polarities, which is all about ascension, is all about, enlightenment or integration, where we're starting to recognize that we have all of these energies inside of us. And, you could even call it the shadow and the light if you wanted to, right? And that the integration of those energies, he shared this with me, at that time, saying how it's, the gateway to Christ consciousness. And that was something that my healer had actually been priming me for during our sessions. Like I was starting to open up my mind to realize, wait a minute, this is actually something that is available to all of us. And I know, Laura, you talk about the Hyros Gamos union. It's the same thing, right? It doesn't matter what words you want to put on it. It's about the full potential of being human and what we can access with our full abilities, basically, of love. It's like the love word sounds maybe woo-woo or maybe oversimplistic and not scientific to some, but, I'm going to quote, and it seems like a little bit tangent, but there's, I like some movies every so often. I know a lot of them is kind of junk, but there's the one movie, Interstellar. And there, I have questions about that movie itself, but there's some things in it that are just so profound that I think about often, and I reframe them or quote them, and there's one line, you know, because they're all very scientific and they have very limited resources to potentially save humanity. And one of the things that was coming up in the conversation was this phenomenon of love. And, you know, saying, oh, well, maybe it's just social utilitarianism, right? That we love each other. There's no real purpose behind it. And well, how can you have social utility when you love people who have died? That obviously doesn't fit, right? And so she said this quote, forgive me if I'm not getting it exactly right, but something to the effect of, love is the one thing that we know that can transcend dimensions of time and space. And so maybe it's worth it that we trust it. Right. And I think, and I believe, and I know in my heart that that is actually the God vibration, the universal source creation vibration, whatever name you want to put on it, the names don't matter. What the experience that the names point to, that's what matters. And astrology gave me access to those kinds of experiences where on my first reading, I'm having someone not only read my personality and read my chart and all of these things, but read my potential for the future on a soul level, you know, talking about this thing that I had been longing for within myself, almost like secretly in my own psyche, you know, not something I talked about too often because people are going to think I'm crazy, right? Oh, you're a Jesus freak. Oh, you have a Messiah complex. Yeah, okay, maybe in some points, but that's not what it's about, right? It's about activating and reaching and striving for that true potential, which was already a goal very dear to my heart at the time. And when he said that to me in the reading, he had no clue. I'd never spoken to this man before in my life. But in that moment, the tears just started welling up in my eyes because I felt so seen on a profound soul level that I had never, you know, experienced before. And that was the spark where I was just hooked. I dove in head first, every little piece of information I could get. Since then, you know, it's been all 10 years now. I've just been voraciously devouring because, you know, like you said, Laura, it's a language, and you know, perceived to be as a pseudoscience. I think that we can, the white ivory tower and all of the obfuscation, you know, the deliberate hiding and misinformation and disinformation that is meant to disempower people from the soul level connections, from the higher self connection, where we start to get out of the matrix of materiality a little bit and say, wait a minute, maybe there's something more than what's on the surface. Maybe the planets can actually guide us and reflect back to us our own evolutionary processes, which they have for me. And then one quick note, and then I'll pass the mic, because I'd been studying astrology. It was just when we were having the Uranus-Pluto square. So what was that? 2018, 2017, right? And I had been studying astrology for a few years, so I knew enough about it. And I started to look more into my own Aquarian Uranian energy, right? I didn't really pick it up at first because I didn't have anything really, no major planets in the sign of Aquarius, but of course, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, right? So it took me a couple of years to realize that connection. And then I saw Uranus is prominently featured in my chart. So this Uranus-Pluto square was actually affecting me pretty strongly. And I would notice something, that I would get insomnia like right around the full moon every month, and the full moon was totally related to the Uranus-Pluto square situation. And then finally one day, this is what I knew for myself, and I swear to God, hand to God, I'm not lying about this one. I was feeling Uranus's energy because the insomnia was driving me crazy. You know, I was living in New York at the time, healing my cancer, working a full-time job, doing yoga, personal training, cooking, and I had to be responsible, right? But I couldn't sleep because of these aspects. And I knew it was the aspects because it was happening cyclically. It was happening every month around the same time. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So finally, I recognized that there was something going on. I could feel it. I could actually hear it. I could swear I could hear like ringing in my ears. And I'm like, you know what? I bet it's Uranus. I know it's Uranus. I can feel it. And so I was waking up out of bed because I couldn't sleep anyway. And I was kind of like trying to feel out for where it was, right? And so I actually kind of like just closed my eyes, felt into it, and then I pointed for myself. No one else was around, but I pointed in the direction of where I felt this energy was coming from. I had one of those little apps that tell you where the stars are and everything, right? I downloaded it to make sure. So I'm like, all right. And I look at it, and exactly where I pointed was where Uranus was. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, I didn't, you know, I had no clue, but that was a big awakening to me. And, you know, ironically, Uranus is the planet of awakening, where it's like, this is real. This is real. And, you know, one final point about yoga and astrology are related. Ancient yoga and astrology were hand in hand. So there's that. And, you know, the ancient yogis and even some of the more modern ones, they are supposed to have developed these skills where they can actually sense the planets. And they can tell when it's a full moon, not by looking, by just feeling it in their body. So, you know, there's an ancient legacy. There's so much value. And I'm just so delighted to be here to share it with everyone and with you lovely souls.
Oh my God, amazing. And I heard, I mean, not saying that, you know, I trying to avoid having fixed beliefs. I just like to appreciate, you know, a certain situation or experience, and then, you know, maybe, you know, get a grip on the patterning as far as the astrology is concerned, but also see the flexibility as far as how our perception can experience it. I'm not totally down with some of the Gnostic texts and some of the things that have presented themselves, even though like maybe 80% of it feels like truth. Some of it feels a little distorted just because that's part of, you know, this darker agenda to just demonize, you know, to keep us out of balance and, you know, create blame somewhere when we're a part of this greater like experience of a free will universe. And in these times, it doesn't feel very free will when it's like, you can't enter the store unless you're wearing one mask. And now you need to wear 3 masks, and you might, you know, I mean, what we've seen with this administration and all this stuff, it's like so beyond politics to me. But when I kind of like reflect on, you know, some of the Gnosticism ideology, the one thing that stuck out was that despite these astrological alignments that are happening, our consciousness and the way we relate to it has more of an impact than we can imagine. We can actually change the nature of how planetary bodies are relating to each other, because we're not just like a product of whatever alignments are going on. We're actually like the Rubik's Cube masterminds behind how, knowing how to solve the puzzle in order to create like huge breakthroughs. And that's what I love about Uranus. It brings in the genius, the authenticity, you know, the sovereignty, to be able to experience creation in a very beautiful and unique way. I mean, to me, that fuels like great artists and writers and poets and musicians. But, you know, that's very much Neptune too, with the multidimensional creative imagination that it connects us to. But I mean, help us to maybe understand the difference between these different types of astrology systems. And what do you guys think about like the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto? To me, those are like almost like our spirit guides that are always trying to initiate us and wake us up and like take us into experiences that our ego, mind, self might not be prepared for. But at the same time, once we go through it and look back at it, it's just like, oh my God, now it makes sense. I'm really glad I went through that. It's like Pluto takes us into the dark night of the soul. Uranus can kick our ass with like shocks and upheavals that, you know, it's like the wrecking balls. Like to me, it's like the Tower card in the tarot. And then Neptune, like I feel on the world stage right now, they're really utilizing the Neptune energy of how can we haunt your mental body and feed you a narrative that you literally believe in to the point where you're helping to enable a very dark artificial timeline. I mean, so let's talk about like mind over matter and how we can utilize these planetary forces and understand them to overcome these assaults, because they're using their reversals. They're wanting to push people into the shadow side of what these greater cosmic and earthly energies and astrological alignments represent. They literally are inverting it. And they've been doing it for so long. Like, how do you guys like reconcile that? And like, how do you feel about it? And are you like in shock and trauma about what you're seeing in the world with everybody like, you know, totally masked? And maybe we'll start with you, Sasha. See, I told you I was going to have really long-winded questions, but.
Thank you. I appreciate this inquiry. It's beautiful. And I appreciate everything that Adam and Ian brought to the table.
Oh my
It's a
God,
rich
they're such
conversation.
amazing. Yes, sorry, I'll shut up. Yep, totally. Oh my God.
I just feel like we're all pointing to the same thing and speaking different ways. And I really appreciated what Adam was saying about feeling the planets, because that really was, you know, the big message that I got from Venus when I watched her cross the face of the sun was like the knowledge is in us. It's in our cellular memory, and it's really a matter of tapping into that. And so, you know, this is what initiated me on my path of kind of an astrological system to orient to heart. So I also had a very large heart opening when I was in my early 20s, and I got a taste of another level of reality that was all about this unity consciousness and all about really experiencing love in a very visceral way in my being. That we get to have these peak experiences. Sometimes they're just peaks into something, and then they become our touchstones. And so when I had that experience with Venus and I got to watch her for the last time in our life, got to see her actually eclipse the sun, I knew there was something very special going on. And I've been studying astrology at that point for a good 20 years, but I didn't know anything about cycles. I didn't know that Venus had a cycle. I didn't know that, and so it really initiated me into the living sky and what that means, and that Venus has a cycle with the sun, and she comes into this divine union, Hyros Gamos situation, once every 19 months. And so that was the first one that I got to follow, and then I've been following this Venus cycle now for 8 years. And she's now back at that same point that she was in 2012. We don't get to see her, but in the summer she was there again. And so I feel like there's this very personal way, because you're asking about these outer planets. And I've been someone who's been very psychically open without really knowing that, had a lot of trauma without really understanding what that meant, and was very overwhelmed by life, very overwhelmed. And I feel like a lot of that is that outer planet. We could look at that as the outer planet influences. They're overwhelming for our human experience. They're larger than life. They are, in these other realms that we might not understand in the 3D. And so that's why I brought my practice into, that's why I founded Venus Wisdom. I brought my practice into how do we bring whatever is arising into our bodies, into our hearts? How do we ground in our center? And then whatever comes in, we're safe because it's held in love. Love is the filter, and it's in our bodies. So I stopped doing any kind of astral projection, any kind of journeying where I leave my body. I stopped all of that as we moved into this moment that we're in now. It became clearer to me as Venus returned to that spot. It was like that was the preview, that was the end of the Mayan calendar. So Venus met the sun in her last visible appearance in our lifetime in June, and then the end of the Mayan calendar was in December, and that was when sun was at the galactic center in this 26,000 year ish cycle, right? And so I feel the power of that was this message that now the feminine is key to this next age and what happens next, and that's in the body. And so I do feel like there's a lot of I'm like, can I swear? There's a lot of messing with us.
All you guys can swear,
Okay.
because I drop F-bombs like.
Okay,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think there can be a lot of fuckery through other dimensions, and all of the mystics knew this. I mean, I'm really grateful that I read Castaneda when I was 20, because I was like, ooh, this spiritual path, like this is kind of dangerous and weird things might happen. And whoa, it's not like all roses and bliss and dancing. It's like, okay, this is seriously, you need to be a warrior here. And so I got that early. And so I think that is so important, because there's a lot of people, and I grew up in this. I grew up in a new age spiritual community. So I got to deal with all the false light and all the shadow of the positivity very early in life. I got to see it play out. And so now it became much more trendy in our current time to be new age and to open to things and be doing one ayahuasca ceremony after the other, whatever it is. Not to say there's not value to that, but to just meet the spiritual life wide open without that protection. And to me, that is the Plutonian energies, the Neptune energies, the Uranian energies. And so how do we stay centered in our body so we can actually receive the medicine? Like you can have 1,200 empowerments from a totally qualified Vajrayana master, but if you're not in your body to receive it, that's just hanging out somewhere in your energy field, like some blessing for some time, but not now. And, you know, how present are we to the blessing of this moment? And to me, that is the intimacy of being in our bodies, the intimacy of our heart, the intimacy of that Hieros Gamos, where we wake up to our creative power. And so I have the, you know, Adam and I were kind of talking about this on the side, and you know, I have this theory going with Uranus. So I take the outer planets as these external, larger than life energies. If you have an outer planet making contact with one of your personal planets, it's one of the biggest deals ever. We all know that, right? But you know,
Let me just insert. Oh my God! Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Do you have that right now, Laura?
Oh, I mean, you just nailed it right there. Just keep going.
Yeah, right. So I happen to have a chart where Pluto conjuncted every single one of my personal planets, including my ascendant, starting at like 12 years old. So, you know, it's been a very transformative life. And so I think the resource is staying in and learning how to stay in and be with our own experience in a way that we can integrate it and integrate those big moments. So I put a lot more emphasis on the personal planets as far as our development. But Uranus, and this is something maybe I can just plant the seed, and then if we want to pick it up later, we can. You know, I really lean into the traditional rulerships of, you know, Mars rulership of Scorpio. You know, I don't go to outer planets for rulerships, but living sky, Uranus is visible with the naked eye sometimes. And there's something that feels like it's brewing, and it's this place in my being where, again, this is going to intuition, where it's not just like, well, this is what it is. You know, we're either using the traditional rulers or we're using the modern. There's no in between. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, it's much more grounded if we use the rulers of planets that we can see. Mars, Venus, you know, Jupiter, Saturn, those are visible, right? So we can see them. Exactly. And then, you know, if you get a little abstract, if we're using Pluto as the ruler for Scorpio, and I understand that kind
Even
of like
Uranus, like Aquarius, they say in ancient times it was Saturn and Uranus.
Yes. Or
Anyway,
just Saturn. Well, exactly, just Saturn. And so, you know, my whole hot on the trail of what's exciting about this, like, okay, is it going to be the Great Reset or is it going to be the Great Awakening? Like, we're at this choice point, like, which one are we going to choose here in the age of Aquarius? And I feel like Uranus is kind of talking to us and saying, I'm here, like I'm a quantum leap. I know I'm an outer planet, but I am visible sometimes. And as your nervous systems acclimate, you might be able to handle me as the leader of Aquarius, because we know Saturn's trip. Saturn's all about control and domination. And that's what I call, you know, we're coming out of the dominator culture for as long as we can remember. And so I feel like Uranus is kind of flirting with us to be like, hey, you want to go multidimensional? I know, you know, I'm mostly invisible, but there is visibility there. And Uranus did start the last Venus cycle before the one that we're in now, before we return to the same pattern as the summer of 2012. Uranus was visible as Venus met the sun. And so it felt like it was this kind of preparation for the age of Aquarius, this like, hey, I'm blinking at you, I'm winking at you, I'm right here. And so I feel like that is part of the choice point, and we could, you know, talk about that more, but that's a little something to share about how
oh my gosh, I'm just like, you know, I definitely have arm hairs and they're just like all standing up on end. Oh my God, brilliant. So what do you guys have to say, Ian and Adam? I don't know who wants to go first. Again, I said
I would love to respond to what Sasha said, because she had something that segues into something I really wanted to touch on here, because I know there is such a feeling of heaviness and darkness right now. There is such a, you know, it seems almost impossible that the Great Reset isn't going to come to fruition. But I want to bring up a couple of points. First of all, the system that's been in place for a long, long time, as you pointed out, In fact, I'm actually even going to back it up a little bit. I'm going to talk about very briefly the Yuga system, which is a Vedic concept that there's cyclical periods of time that over the course of the 26,000-ish, as we say, a great year, which is what Sasha was talking about with the Mayan calendar, kind of equates to the astrological great year as the solar system as the solar system travels around the galactic center. We go through 4 phases, although it kind of seems like 5. There's the Sat Yuga, which is the golden age, which was Atlantis, or the full cycle before that, Lemuria's golden age. But at some point, Atlantis started to fall away from that level of consciousness. And the thing is that the golden age is very beautiful to experience. It's really wonderful, but it's quite stagnant. It's quite stagnant. There isn't a lot of growth, because why would you change when everything's wonderful? And that's the thing that we have to wonder about these, seemingly the force of evil, for example. It's actually an evolutionary force. It's what drives us inward. It's what forces us by sometimes stripping away things that were very near and dear to us in order to drive us inward, so that we can find that divinity within ourselves. And I don't mean it in the sense of some people take that to mean, I'm personally am a God. No, I mean, we all are God. Everything is God. That bed behind me is God. This screen we're looking on is God. In that sense, but being able to know that by being driven inward. So the Sat Yuga at some point ended, and that's when Atlantis started to use that high technology they had developed during the Golden Age to dominate others, and they fell into a Silver Age. And at some point during the Silver Age, Atlantis completely fell. Atlantis was completely destroyed from within through its own mistakes. Then we went even further down into a Bronze Age. And then we went even further, and that's Dwapara Yuga. And then we went even further down into the Kali Yuga. And there's first a descending Kali Yuga and then an ascending Kali Yuga. And the nadir, the point at which the Kali Yuga was at its depths, was about 2,160 years ago. So it's around 150 BC thereabouts, right? And it's around that time when the Roman Empire rises. And that's then the ascending Kali Yuga. And so during this entire period of Kali Yuga, which is about 4,320 years, the entirety of human memory that hasn't been erased, some stuff's been squirreled away here and there, some knowledge has been preserved, but a lot of it's been obliterated by these forces, these, I like to call them dark magicians, who have been utterly dominant for the past 4,320 years. But the good news is, I had, from the moment that I listened to or heard about the Yuga system, I was on a quest to find a reasonable explanation for where are we currently. And there's a gentleman who's an Indian scholar from India, who was on Graham Hancock's website, and he went through every conceivable version of the Yuga system. And he eventually landed on that the Kali Yuga ends in 2025. So how could that be, given the current destructive things? And I'll also notice outer planets, a lot of the really harsh outer planetary aspects that are currently going and will, I hate to tell you, be really grinding us out for the next 4 years. Those also end right around that time and suddenly start having harmonious aspects.
Can I just interject? Uranus square Saturn. That's one of them, right? And like the Pluto square Mars with the Eris. Yeah. The asteroid of goddess of strife and conflict. No, keep going. I just exactly. I'm just is like exactly right.
It's like, really dicey. But consider, the funny thing is these forces of evil are doing something that I do not believe currently the forces of good could possibly do. And that is, they're tearing down the system of control they did have in favor of, they want to create an even more unbelievable technocratic total control system. That's their goal. You know, Klaus Schwab, COVID-19, the Great Reset, they just, it's breathtaking to me how they lay this out there, and you show it to someone, I like to call folks who aren't awake yet muggles, like Harry Potter. You show it to a muggle and they go, I don't know, that sounds okay to me. And I'm just like, You know, I need that entire room full of people simultaneously doing the face palm gif, you know, for that. But you know, their goal is nothing short of total cradle to grave control. And even it seems the elimination of humanity as a species through bioengineering and cybernetics and all this incredibly dark nonsense. But in order to do that, they have to get rid of the old control system, which worked very effectively for about 4,320 years. And part of that was patriarchy. And I mean that in the sense of the opposite of divine masculine, the infernal masculine, right? The dark warlock energy. And so they're wiping that away, and they're kind of, as part of this process, they're doing it with a Trojan horse kind of nonsense, like Greta Thunberg and some of these other women that they're bolstering forward, or Kamala Harris. Oh, she's so wonderful. Don't pay any attention to what she's done down in California, right? To single black moms thrown in jail. But, you know, don't pay any attention to her record. It's a woman, and any woman is great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But,
yep.
But the thing is that they're opening the door for the divine feminine. And all she needs is a crack. And she just flows in like water, and then she can freeze and just break it apart. And the divine feminine is rising up, and there's just no question about it. If you turn off the noise and you turn off the nonsense, I'm actually part of a mystical knighthood that's dedicated to Mary Magdalene. And there's no question that the divine feminine is rising. And I think that as Adam and I, as embodied males, our job is to help to rehabilitate the masculine energy in order to fulfill that important role of the protector, the provider, the arrow through time around which the divine feminine's beautiful waveform and holding space of creation can flow into the world. And I am someone who, to bring it full circle to your question, I'm someone who has Pluto 0 degrees conjunct my aspect, or I mean my ascendant. So that kind of aspect, you know the power of the outer planets when you have that. And in fact, I've had people tell me my entire life that my gaze is unnerving. And it literally says with that aspect, you'll have an unnerving gaze because you look right into people's souls.
Yeah,
Kurt Cobain had that aspect. What? Sorry?
Oh, if I interrupt, I'd rather just be like, but no, when you're an activator, you know, when you're somebody that spurs on somebody else's growth, where they don't know what hit them, it's a frequency thing. I mean, that's got to appreciate that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And freaking outer planets, like all my personal planets are connected to outer planets. So I'm like, I don't want to say I'm overwhelmed, but I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? It's like insane. I knew this was going to be, so I'm doing things with my, people may be like, oh, that's satanic. It's like, I don't even know what I'm doing with my fingers. Mudras. Yes.
Yeah. Just to wrap up what I was going to say, and then pass it off to Adam. Let's see. So I was talking about having the Pluto on my ascendant. Yeah, just I see that we are really, it's not just that we're presented with the choice. I believe on some level, and I couldn't explain this to you in a physical sense, but I believe on some level that there is a split that's happening, and that there's going to be at some point, and I think it's in the not too distant future. I think it's over this next short while as we move out of the Kali Yuga. I'm a big fan of Rudolf Steiner, and he talked about Ahriman, the force of darkness, right? You know, we call him Satan, but Ahriman predates Satan by millennia, right? That's a Zoroastrian opposition figure, the great enemy. Steiner talked about the Ahrimanic force, that they would create an 8th sphere, this kind of like sidetracking of humanity's evolution. And I watched this fantastic video, which I'd recommend to anyone watching this, by Dark Journalist, where he interviewed psychic and intuitive Gigi Young, and they talked all about this. And they talked about how there's this split occurring, and one side leads to humans turning into gray aliens. That's us from the future. And the other split has us going towards the ascended masters and going on the natural organic evolution of our species. And I think that as people who are, you know, empaths and frequency holders, it can be really brutal. Laura was saying earlier she's having a rough go right now. If this video had been done 2 or 3 weeks ago, I don't even know if I could have done it. I've been just through the ringer over all this stuff. The fear has gotten to me really bad at times. Just the, you know, the absurdity
family
of
members
it.
that it's like,
Yeah.
my next mission needs to like rescue them, and it's like, should I just let them abduct me to regain the genetic material they lost because they got chapped? Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I just think that our job is to listen to those who are ready to listen, to present the information. But there's people I lost a cumulative 50 plus years of friendship in the past year. I had 2 friends that were over 20-year-long friends, and I lost them over the combination of the virus and politics. I actually didn't vote for either candidate, hilariously enough, but I had some real concerns about the forces behind the current administration, the incredible, overwhelming alliance of basically all the worst organizations on earth behind the current administration. And I tried to point this out, and I tried to point out some other things, and I wasn't even like endorsing, Orange Man bad, but that was all they could hear is Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad. Anything that's not Orange Man bad is automatically good. Give me that shot. Change my DNA. I don't care. And so I think that we have to honor people's sovereignty. We can throw them a rope, but if you try and go swim out there and rescue someone who's drowning, they're just going to pull you under along with them. And I was pulled under again and again and again in this past year. And I lost 3 of my nearest and dearest friends. And I just realized there's no more, I can't put any more coins in this meter. It's over. And if they want to come back to me, and I offered this to all of them, if they want to come back to me, I'm here, I'm ready. I will heal them. I will forgive them. Forgiveness is one of the highest, noblest things we can do. But I think we just have to hold the frequencies because people are waking up, people you wouldn't expect are waking up just suddenly and shockingly. Like if you asked me which of my 5 siblings would be the one who's getting it right now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have been wrong 4 times in a row before getting it right by process of elimination. And my other 4, if you're watching this somehow, I love you, you know that, but obviously you disagree with me on most of this stuff, so this shouldn't be news to you. And you will likewise think I'm lost, perhaps. So I just want to say, it's all unfolding. There is a divine plan, but we also have to acknowledge the sovereignty of all these beings. And I just have to keep reminding myself that, because so many loved ones are just lost. It's like they have a dark cobwebs over their eyes, and they have something in their ears. They just can't hear it. And it's heartbreaking and it's devastating. And I just use that to let it break me open even more. Some more, it's the cracks. That's how the light gets through, as the great Leonard Cohen said. And so I want to hand it over to the beautiful soul Adam and Laura for any commentary you have. Thank you so much. And by the way, you are all so beautiful. Thank you. You make me feel so much better.
Oh man, you just like really made me feel so much better, because I'm not one to, I've been through so many dark night of the souls, underworlds for like 20 years plus. I feel like a veteran of like the darkest of underworlds, but it's just like, you mess with my family, you mess with, no. So I feel like this new thing is emerging out of me, and it's not going to be nice, and it's not going to be pretty, but I feel it's coming from tough love. It's just like, how dare you? They didn't have time to red pill themselves. I did. I don't know. I made the time to make sure that, and then I feel the guilt of, I didn't do enough. And anyway, I'm going to shut up, but what are your thoughts? Sasha, you got some thoughts here.
Yeah, I was excited to hear Adam. I just want to jump in and name one thing, because it's so relevant to what Ian said, and then we can circle back to it. But just, we keep all talking about the trans. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about the Neptune square to the North Node and the South Node, right? And maybe Adam, you're going to go into that more.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you're bringing that up.
No,
it's
it
like
is,
lost
and maybe
the illusions of it all. Okay, go ahead.
It's like literally people are, in a trance. And so maybe Adam, you can take this and run if you want anywhere, but just to kind of name some of the aspects that are happening for this next year, you know, that element is in place. So the South Node is all the righteousness and the I'm right, you're wrong, and the politics of it. And then the North Node is that openness. And the North Node in Gemini actually connects to the current Venus cycle, because the current Venus cycle is in Gemini, and that was the sign she was in when she crossed the face of the sun. So like meeting all of this with an open heart is very much here, but Neptune is in the group trance and the collective trance. So I just wanted to say that out loud, and really looking forward to what you have to say too, Adam and Ian. That was fantastic.
Oh my gosh, that's such a
everything.
huge deal. It's like, seriously, you know, the polarity integration that needs to take place between Gemini and Sagittarius, having that square aspect from Neptune. I mean, come on. And then we got the new moon I'm so glad you brought it up. I keep going, you guys. I'm here. I love you.
You're a delight. Just for the record.
When I laugh. All right, Adam, what are your thoughts? It's like, hello.
So many thoughts. I mean, there's so much genius, again, just shared in like fountains there. You know, a lot of things that I wanted to piggyback off of, but I'm going to just do my best to focus on the points that seem the most pertinent and most fresh to my mind right now. So Ian, I couldn't agree with you more about, you know, men being the stewards for the divine feminine. I mean, of course, all of us are accessing these divine feminine energies. You know, Laura talks about it pretty frequently, about how it was 2010, I think, we started moving through the 13th sign of Ophiuchus, right, which is the only astrological sign that's related to the element of ether, which is also very feminine in its nature, you know. And so we have this energetic feminine rising in our collective cosmos, etc. You know, I think if we can also look at 2012 and that threshold point when we were crossing over the galactic equator, right? Part of the significance of that galactic equator is a feminine energy, in the sense that it relates to the black hole at the center of our galaxy, right? That's what makes that equatorial plane, as opposed, you know, like the gravitational force of that black hole, which is of course feminine in nature, right? The feminine draws in. You have all these different dynamics and expressions of the feminine. I love the image of one little crack, and then the water coming in and the freezing, especially when we're talking about, you know, the Capricorn patriarchy. You know, what did you call it? Not the divine, but the infernal. I love that. Yes, the infernal patriarchy, because there is a difference, right? All of the genders, the polarities, everything, it always has nuances. I like to think of the yin yang symbol, right? How it's both light and dark, but then each one has a piece of the other. So there is a unity that happens there. And there's a unity that can happen within our own personalities, whether you're male or female, it doesn't really matter. There is a calling to reconnect with this feminine energy, because not only has it been suppressed for so long, it has been actively, you know, confused and siphoned and bypassed, and all of these different things that we see with the dominator culture, the Capricorn control freaks, the patriarchy. You know, I call it the narcissism, right? And I have a book that's coming out about all of that, because it's really predictable, actually, once you can see what these patterns and dynamics look like. And so I'm going to share just a little bit of my understanding of what this looks like, and what the past several thousand of years have to say about this or relate to this. Because, okay, first thing that happens, right, when you have a schism between the polarities, right, that's the separation consciousness, right? That's moving away from the spiritual unity and understanding that everything is connected and holographic in one, into, you know, the material, like, okay, this is this, that is that, I'm separate, you are not me, I can kill you, there's no consequence, right? Because it's all just random and chaotic and, you know, nihilistic, materialistic, right? But because we're awakening, because we're starting to reconnect with these feminine energies, we're starting to move out of the hyper mentalized, hyper, you know, dominator culture, where we're starting to have feelings, where we're just like, oh wait, it's okay for me to have feelings. Whoa, I'm an animal being, I'm a human being, I'm an emotional being. I have all these layers to myself, rather than just being an automaton who is, you know, only worth what they can produce, which the patriarchy and this whole, you know, go, do, you know, achieve has a lot to do with that, right? It's the material externalization of self and the worth that can be extracted from that, rather than the innate, inborn, irrefutable worth, right? The inalienable rights that connect us to that divine feminine, and that is rising. So back to Ian's point about, men being really called to task right now, I would say. And it's very nuanced and even a little bit dicey, because at the same time, right, there is an actual agenda to feminize men currently happening right now, and so there's, and I myself, I'll be just come out straight right here. I don't identify sexuality wise, right? My Mars and Venus, I love everybody, honestly, like romantic or otherwise. And I'm just celibate anyway. So I'm not even like, it's not a dating service situation here right now. I'm just saying that I'm familiar with what it is to have both masculine and feminine energy within myself, and the imperative for both. So as far as, the hyper masculine machismo, negative infernal masculine, that gets to go. And that is one of the cornerstone tools of the dominator culture, of the infernal patriarchy, of the narcissist system, that it leads to further, manipulations, social engineering, and mind control, essentially, right? Because it's like, okay, I don't have authority, right? It asserts that the authority lives somewhere externally in the material world, and that we are disconnected from that, right? Whereas when we connect with the feminine, we connect with the inner, we can find that inner light, that inner authority, that inner source that says, okay, this is what's right for us. This is what's true for us. So how do men who are systematically being encouraged to be more feminine, less alpha, less protector, less divine masculine, right? And more maybe shadow feminine, complacent, relaxed, just go with the flow and let things happen. What do we do with that? Well, I think it's about understanding that there isn't a separation between the two of them, that we don't have to look at them as one is better than the other. I think if you're an embodied male and you feel called to that, and you feel like it's natural for you to be more masculine, do that, because we need masculine energy as well. We need the divine masculine to rise along with the divine feminine. But how does that happen if we're infernal males, right? If we're coming at it from the dominator control of the patriarchy, and we're just like, throwing our weight around, I'm a cis white man, I can do whatever I want, right? I mean, I'm not trying to cause any problems around the races. I'm pointing out that these are narratives that exist to divide us, right? But there has been a certain amount of privilege that the cis white male may be experienced. Everybody's been suppressed and abused and gaslit in this culture. So we don't have to like play the game of who's more victimized than the other. But one of the things
oh my God, keep going. Yeah. You're just nailing it. All of you guys. Oh my God. Keep going.
One of the things that I see, with the dominator infernal male culture is an entitlement, is a self-absorption, narcissism, right? That is why I call it the narcissist system, right? Because if you're wounded enough to stay in your own little ego shell and only think about yourself, only think about your material gains, only think about materialism, and not see how you're connected to the greater whole, it's really easy to become a cog in that system where you're actually just being used to abuse and manipulate and dominate and control other people, right? Because the system, the pyramid top-down energy just naturally works that way. So as embodied males, as males who are in touch with both polarities, I think it behooves us to be honest about the fact that we're still emotional beings. Everyone is an emotional being. If you're in a body right now, you are an emotional being. So men have been systematically programmed to think, oh, emotions are bad, emotions are wrong. It makes me less of a man, right, to have any emotions. And then we suppress, we deny, we bypass. And that's how we become unwitting abusers, because we can start to disassociate. And then that's where also entities can come in and other forces where we're not even conscious. With that Neptune square, the North Node, there can be a lot of delusions that go inside of these kinds of dynamics. So I think as men, it's harder for us to admit that we're emotional. I think women, have a little bit of an easier time with it. However, I will point out that women are also, I think, suppressed emotionally in this system. I don't think anyone is really safe to have emotions or boundaries or needs, right? It's like we're all kind of dealing with that. But men, I think, have it a little bit worse. And that was targeted because men can be more abusive, I believe, given that setup. When we connect ourselves from our emotions, then we become sociopathic. Then we start to become agents of that system, right? Where we're starting to dole out the abuse without even thinking about it. We don't even think it's abuse because it's normalized as, oh yeah, that's just the way it is. So it's up to us men to actually have feelings, allow ourselves to feel them, embrace them, do what's required about being an emotional being, and then allow that to encourage more authentic masculinity, right? That doesn't mean that I have to be a puddle of mess and constantly giving my emotions out to the world. I keep a lot to myself, actually, because I don't want to bother with, outsourcing my power or even burdening other people, right? But if I need help, you better believe I'm going to ask for it, right? If I want to come together and create this community, you better believe I'm going to ask for it, because I don't have the shame of, oh, well, I need to be a perfect strong man and never let anybody in, right? Because that is another, infiltration of the system. So I think that's huge right now. As we embody more of the feminine energy, we get in touch with the inner. I say it all the time, love within for the win. And love, maybe it's a feminine vibration. I don't know if we have to put a gender on it, but it's all that I believe that we need. And it's easier said than done, because we have this system that's encouraged us to do exactly the opposite for really thousands of years, right? So we're not just talking about, whatever time frame of our own lifetime. We're talking about racial, historical, generational trauma that's in our DNA for generations. I just recently heard someone say that it's up to 4 generations. If you experience famine, the 4th generation person can still have arthritis associated with that famine, and that it was happened 4 generations prior, right? So we're still unwinding and untangling ourselves from this system of disempowerment, of materialism, of outsourcing our authority. And so getting into the outer planets a little bit and how I think these things connect. I personally have Uranus conjunct my moon and conjunct
Jupiter. That's a great, because the moon is so emotional. Like Uranus is the higher octave of lunar energy. It really blasts out the Saturn moon matrix, right? That's a really good placement to have the moon.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, I'm glad that you gave me that perspective, because, for me, it definitely comes up as hyper emotionalism, right? Which is part of why I'm talking about the emotions, because I've been a very emotional being. And in fact, up until recently, I didn't realize that how many layers of emotions I was still suppressing because of society, because of whatever things I had learned. Now, like you said, Laura, that is absolutely an access to my liberation. And one of the reasons why I never really invested too deeply in this system was because there was always that higher consciousness, looking out above the big picture, wait, I don't want to be a part of this system. I don't feel comfortable with what everyone else just thinks is the convention. I don't know, something about this isn't right for me. So, I feel that there is a deep personal connection for me in that awakening consciousness. Also, Uranus represents upsets, right? It's also awakening, it's liberation, it's freedom, it's upsets. I've experienced a lot of emotional upset, I would say, in my life, but there's often an awakening on the other side of that upset that comes through. It's like whatever I might have been attached to, especially emotionally, right? It's like, whew, I release it, I let it go, break free, and then I see there's a bigger space and there's a bigger connection. And so actually, I'm really grateful to the Uranian Aquarian energies, to help break down that system within my own psyche. And this is, I think, the greatest access that we have here as a collective ahead of us, right? We have this Aquarian Uranian energy coming in full force, and, with the precession of the equinoxes, now we're officially in the age of Aquarius, especially with the great conjunction that was kind of a kickoff, right? And we have Mercury currently retrograding in Aquarius right now with this superstellium Jupiter, Saturn, Venus is also there, right? We have a new moon with Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury retrograde tomorrow, which I'm actually going to be doing a Facebook Live with a meditation that I'm going to explain a little bit about right now, because I was doing a deep meditation. So I have this meditation practice. It started from the law of attraction work that I did in my travels and, working with mindset technologies and understanding just how powerful the mind is, right? And you mentioned it, Laura, Uranus they're all connected, all the planets, right? And so Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. Mercury represents the mind, but Uranus represents the higher mind or the universal mind and this, out there perspective of possibilities, right? Jupiter is, I think, a little bit connected to that for me personally, for sure. And when I was going through this stuff and really activating the law of attraction practices within myself, I manifested some miracles. I don't have to go into those details right now, but I understood that it works, right? It works. And that gratitude and visualization are one of the best tools that we can use to actually create new experiences, new realities to manifest into our experience. And so recently, and for the past ever since, many years, I've been practicing on gratitude. That's one of my main practices. And a couple of nights ago, I got really deep into it where I'm just generating these feelings of gratitude and feeling them grow stronger, imagining them with every heartbeat, feeling gratitude for my heart, for my body, for my blood cells, all of it, right? And this energy field just kind of expands. And when it does, and when I really break through, maybe after 20 or 30 minutes of holding that vibration, it's like, whew, it's like I my consciousness expands almost like a DMT trip, where it just like shoots out and sees the bigger picture. And so this is what I see Uranus and the Aquarian energy giving us access to, the multidimensional nature of reality, where we actually choose our timelines based on the thoughts that we hold and we manifest, because it is quantum. And as we are moving deeper into these energies, I personally feel, and I've heard a lot of other people report this, that time is speeding up, and that also manifestations are speeding up. I've also noticed my own karma is speeding up, right? It's like I have a thought, boom, like it will manifest, good or bad. It's like instant karma in a lot of cases, right? So I see a major potential available for us. And one of the reasons why our attention is being so siphoned and hijacked is because our attention and intention is the fuel for the vehicle of manifestation. So wherever we're giving our focus and energy, that's what we're going to manifest into. So why not focus on and manifest into our own innate potential, our own higher selves, our own timelines, where we can actually, I mean, everyone is so ready to just like, and I understand, you know, the world, the system is set up to do this, though. It's set up to make us think we have no power, we have no authority, and we have no sovereignty. The truth remains, we have total free will, we have total sovereignty, and we have total power, and it has everything to do with thought, word, and deed. So if we can get our minds, our emotions, our feelings, and our words and our actions on the right track, we take control of the manifestation. It's not up to them. They're hijacking the power that we have for their manifestation. So if we can actually get in touch with these outer planetary energies like Uranus and Aquarius and all these other things, we can channel those energies in our body and create, as maybe emissaries of those planetary energies, the new realities that we came here to create.
Beautiful words, Adam. Thank you so much. So, okay, you guys, I don't mean to make this personal, but so friends and family, people are freaking out. They're getting vaccinated. When you see the astrological landscape, I mean, what thoughts come up in you as far as like, you know, oh yeah, well, that's going to compromise their DNA and immune system forever. They're going to have inflammation response to anaphylactic shock, you know, all this crazy stuff. Like I have been like a monsoon season of tears because of family members that have gotten vaccinated. So it sounds a little personal, but I mean, as far as like astrology and like your greater understanding of benevolent beings and, you know, this greater compassionate energy that to me is like source creator, that for an innocent soul that like didn't know better, I mean, they're not fucked, right? Anybody want to talk about that?
Well, I want to address something, and I feel like it
Thank
does.
you, Adam, for what you shared, and all of you guys. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to make an invitation, because I think all of the upsetting things, if you're a sensitive feeling being, you know, it's extremely upsetting to see that so many people that we care about, or so many people in our community, are choosing this other timeline, choosing this other reality. And not only that, but there's a backlash against those of us that might not agree with that, or trying to keep that openness. So I want to talk about what both of you spoke of, the divine feminine and the reemergence and the resurrection. And so I feel like that is actually the resource for this super upsetting content. Like I have a hard time daily when I just go into town and I see the transformation of my community, you know, and what people are choosing and what they're choosing for their children, little ones, you know, being masked outside, walking at the beach, you know, just like, I don't really know what to do with that. My heart hurts, because I very much am oriented towards putting children at center of our culture. If we want to create a culture that's based on care and connection, we need to tend to that. So the resurrection of the feminine, we have this choice point. And I would say that when Venus crossed the face of the sun in 2012, we had the spark of the solar feminine returning to this planet to be anchored. And we're getting to take it to the next level now. And so there's a difference between the solar feminine and the lunar feminine. And so I've actually created a map, and if we have a moment, I'm happy to, just share it. And anyone who signs up for anything gets my map. I worked on it to give us an alternate place to orient, because my experience, 8 years of syncing with Venus, is that there's a difference between emotion and authentic feeling. And the moon is very much emotion. It's that reaction. We know lunacy happens at the full moons. There's this amp in our systems. We know it's part of a control system that keeps us safe on one sense, in that we're familiar. Even if the familiar is toxic, it's safe because it's familiar. And so, after a whole lifetime of syncing with the moon, being very into the moon cycle, I started to feel the difference. How does it feel? The moonlight. How does it feel when I watch Venus and I receive her light in my eyes and I have this intimacy? And so I've really created an alternate way to work with the monthly cycles. And so actually tomorrow is the first time that Venus and moon will meet. Venus is now in the underworld. She's just leaving the morning star. So that's a part of this energy right now. Is the planet that represents heart and connection can no longer be seen. Even if we're not tracking her, there's like there's not a way to get that same reflection from the external. It's asking us to go even deeper within and find the light and source within. And so the moon is on Wednesday or Thursday, the next day, the 11th, but tomorrow is the moon and the Venus gate. These are the gates. And this goes back to the most ancient story of Inanna. And so I found that when I sync, I use that as my monthly marker to plant my seed. I plant my seed with Venus. It's like, okay, yeah, we need the safety of the lunar feminine, but we're also going to bring in the ability to evolve with Venus. And we're going to put Venus first. We're going to put heart first. We're not going to put history, conditioning, and reaction first. And my emotional reactivity in my nervous system has calmed down so much in the last 8 years. You wouldn't recognize me if you knew me before, because I'm more centered. I'm not in that like moon energy of like, oh my gosh, it's like, and so the authentic feeling is the feeling that arises before the story. The moon is the story. It's like, I'm angry at you. The at you is the story. The at you is the polarity. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm just being angry. I'm burning in my anger. There's no object. And that's the evolution. So the moon is constellating the earth. It's tucking us in. It's keeping us safe by keeping us in our familiar stories. Whereas if this is Earth and this is Venus, she starts out, closest to the earth with the sun here, but she goes behind the sun. She's on the other side of the sun now. So we get to stretch in our consciousness behind the sun and have that level of edge and risk and not knowing. And when we drop into that not knowing in our bodies, a very different kind of feeling relationship happens. And it's possible to hold the rivers of grief and the wildfires of rage and the iciness of the fear. It's possible in the heart. The container of the heart can hold it all. And right now with the underworld, it's like the deeper we dive into that, into our bodies, into the feminine mystery, the higher that will fly in May when Venus becomes the evening star. And she'll reappear as the mature feminine, having died and been reborn, connecting back to that first written resurrection story of Inanna before, that's like 5000 BC, right? So again, Uranus is in Taurus. Uranus is in Venus's sign. So if we give Uranus the thumbs up for being the ruler of the age of Aquarius, that's telling us the revolution is in. It's in our bodies. It's in our feminine wisdom, no matter what gender or sex we are. It's in claiming the organic, the natural, the saying no, taking a stand against this invasive technology, against the AI. That is the true revolution. The farming, the sustainability, the protection of our bodies and our children's bodies. And yet we can only do what we can do within our sphere. And I've lost influence, over my family. And I really feel the heartbreak, Laura, because they're doing what they're doing. But as far as my piece of being able to move through the grief and all of the feelings, I found that the syncing with the Venus cycle is very powerful. So I invite anyone who wants to learn more about that. You know, I share a lot of content in my Facebook group, and, you know, if you want to get the map and like see, so tomorrow's the day that, you know, not the new, you know, I call it the new Venus portal. And then there's the peak Venus portal, and it's very close to the new moon and the full moon, but it's slightly different. And it feels like it's inviting in that authentic feeling before the story, where we have a lot more resilience. So I'll just show that really quick as a screen share, and then, you know, we can move on. But this is, and it might be a little bit like a lot to look at once, but, you know, just to get a sense of, you know, what this is with Sun at center and Earth here. Venus starts closest to the Sun, and she moves this way as, she moves this way as morning star. I just reversed the map because it's more astronomically correct. And these are all of those Venus moon meetups and all the dates and everything. We've gone through all of them. She's set as the morning star. She's now in the underworld phase. And then, you know, she's going to meet the moon in the underworld phase, and we won't see it, but we can still feel it. And tomorrow's the first underworld gate. And then she's going to rise as evening star in mid-May. And then she's going to meet the moon in the evening sky. And it's so beautiful to see those two together. A lot of the flags have this on them, right? The moon and Venus. And then, of course, she's going to retrograde at the end of her cycle. And then she will be in front of the Sun for a little bit, and we won't be able to see her. And that's for 40 days, which is a very sacred number, as well as she resets. So there's the reset phase, the morning star phase, the underworld phase, and the evening star phase. So right now we're in the underworld phase. So just to carry that with us, that, you know, it's deep. These are deep times. We're meeting death, in a sense, the death of what was. And if we meet that death with a willingness to let whatever is not authentic about our own being die, then we become that spiritual warrior, because their death is going to happen. But it doesn't mean that it's what's precious. The most precious to who we are, it can never be taken. It's infinite. So the more that we identify with the infinite, then the more that we'll be resilient in all that's being restructured. Adam, is that your hand up?
Oh my God, that was so like profound
so cool.
and epic. Thank you so much, Sasha. I knew it was going to be insane. Well, happy insane listening to you. And we have these awesome divine masculine energies. It's like, the thing is the throat chakra, you know, when people talk about 5D, you know, it's the frequency of our words, you know, words of power. So when they mask us, or people regurgitate what they saw in the news and this and that, it's like, this is the growth period that we're going through as a humanity. And anyway, you just saw, I feel like you just like whipped off a bunch of millions of souls that are just like afraid of themselves with your beautiful words. Anyway, what do you guys have to say?
Adam has his hand up. It's so cool. I can see it.
I know. Yeah, I was just like, I was going to this thing. And I was like, I hope I turned off the camera, because I was like, oh my God.
No, you're good, Laura. I was
Great.
I wanted to get in after Sasha, because you had said some things that were pertinent. Thank you so much for bringing up the Uranus and Taurus energy, because I'd wanted to reference that actually as a good illustration of the divine feminine, right? Like how perfect that as we move into this massive Aquarian energy and age with the great conjunction Jupiter and Saturn on the 21st of December this past year, but that Uranus, the ruler of that sign, is in feminine Taurus, ruled by Venus, right? It's like, it's encouraging us to go within, and you totally nailed it. So I actually wanted to ask you a quick question, and then I wanted to offer a little bit in response to answering Laura's question. But because you were just talking about the underworld phase, and I don't know, forgive me if you did answer it already, but I just wanted to clarify, because it could maybe be the answer. But my specific question is, like, for the underworld phase with Venus, of course, Venus, you know, being the ruler of Libra as well as Taurus, she also rules our relationships and our, you know, interactions at large with people. and these kinds of connections. And of course, Laura's asking about, you know, our family members, those we love, who are maybe, you know, becoming compromised by the system. Do you have any further illustrations about like what we might expect during this Venus underworld phase over the next few months, and how it might influence our relationships and everything that's going on in the world?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So Venus meets the sun is our heart meeting source. It's embodying the light codes, it's embodying love. And so when Venus is in the underworld, and I've watched this for 8 years, we receive less social reflection from the outside. We receive less affirmation of other. Other is not so present because Venus is the great reflector. She's like a wise sister to Earth. We are the Earth. That's the original feminine, right? We're matter. We're here embodied. We're also stardust, but she's mirroring that back to us. And so subconsciously, even if people aren't watching her in the morning, there's something in the field that can feel that reflection. And now she's gone. And so it's like we need to come into a deeper relationship with source within ourselves during this time. It's like a retreat time. It's like a time to really, you know, whether we're celibate or not, to really pull our energy into to nourish our own internal union and love, and to be able to affirm ourselves. And that it feels like, because of everything that's being restructured in the world, that the people that are going to fall away are going to fall away, and we're going to find that strength from within. It's kind of like reminds me of the Hermit card in the tarot deck. You know, that going within, finding the light within, finding the sun within. Venus is actually right with the sun. So during the whole underworld phase, I'm encouraging everyone to get up at sunrise and let that light in your eyes, because she's right there. We just can't see her. She's right there. You know, she's tracking across the sky all day long with the sun. So really get with the sun, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, and feel what you were saying, Adam, that gratitude for life, and fill up with our own light, because the feminine is never, ever operating not in partnership with the masculine. They're always and forever dancing.
Well,
Yeah.
the whole planetary grid network is made up of it. Same with our DNA. It's like electromagnetic positive, negative charge. It's like, you know, that's how we like, if your car dies, it's just like, we'll put like the jumper cables over here and over there. It's like the same kind of thing. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm back to life. One of my favorite shows, and I don't really like to watch anything, but every once in a while I'm like, okay, well, the people that died for 15 or 20 minutes in their stories, like that's one of my favorite shows right now on Amazon. But yeah, I was gonna say something else, but you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example too. Like, what's most important to us when we die, in our last breaths? It's the relationships, it's the connections. That's what's important when we cross over. It's not how much money we made or what our house looked like, right? It's the substance of love. So I would say, to answer, finish that answer, Adam, it's like we're in the deep initiation time, deeper into a process of love within our own being, and our ability to shine no matter what. No matter if we don't get the external validation that we're good. It's like, just show up and shine. This is what we were born for. We were born for this moment. We have something so unique to bring in the age of Aquarius, each of us. And we've been so shamed out of bringing our unique offering by this toxic culture. And it's time to show up, bring our weird, bring our unusual, bring our edge, whatever that innovative, a collective idea and vision, and shine it out so we can find our kin. The people that fall away are going to fall away. The people will go, yes, you're singing my song, and we can hear each other. And then in May, it's going to be very powerful when she moves into the evening star in this particular cycle, after everything has just happened, because then we're going to be in more agency. We're going to be actually demonstrating everything that we learned in the underworld time. And we're going to need a lot of social reflection at that point to see, like, oh, am I getting it? I have this profound realization, and all the beings will reflect back to us whether or not we're on the right track. So it's a really good time to take retreat if you can, even if it's just a day a week, it's a really good time to be in silence. It's a really good time to be in nature always, but particularly, in the dark.
Do any of you guys feel like sometimes it's like you thought you might be done with the underworlds, and this is like, nope, sorry, no, your tour duty's not over yet. It's like, I mean, it's like so many years of my life, like more than a decade. I was like, and I was writing about it, and got targeted, and all of it got deleted. Yeah, well, I guess I'm weak, and somehow an archon just had to come and like delete everything that I wrote. Whatever. And I'm trying to be derogatory here, but do you guys sometimes feel like you expected a different situation than what we're experiencing right now? And if we could just go around,
I think that's probably very common for a lot of people. I certainly wasn't expecting my life to be like this, or the collective to be like this. But I think that's also part of the Aquarian Uranian energy, is that it's full of surprises. So it's like we're definitely getting a lot of surprises.
I know Uranus is just like, Uranus is, that's why that's my favorite planet. But at the same time, I'm just like, you're a friggin' bitch. Sorry, keep going.
There's a lot of truth to that. I mean, Uranus is also associated with the trickster. So there's, I think all of the planets have both their positive and negative potentials. And I just want to say this one little quick thing, and then Ian, I'm going to let you go. In response to your question, Laura, about like what to do with these relationships and those people that we care about that maybe are, investing in the system more. I actually wanted to share just a couple of little quotes from this upcoming book that I'm writing about the narcissist system, right? Because I feel like it's really pertinent, and then it's going to help to illustrate the point that I want to make, which also kind of piggybacks off of your point, Sasha, before about, Venus and love energy. So those buying into the narcissist system are so caught up in their own pain that they can't see how they pass it on to others. Right. So in the case of parents with their children, right, they're living so much in fear that they're just like, okay, I want to make sure my child's okay. Let's, get him the jab. But they don't realize that that's perpetuating more of the pain, right? Because the fear operating system. And then, back to illustrate especially the strong dominator culture that's a part of the system. One of the cornerstones of the shadow patriarchy energy of the system is to program low self-worth through hypercriticism and perpetuate slave consciousness through endlessly seeking external approval or privilege by buying into that system, right? So it's like everybody who's doing all this stuff, it's like they're just kind of following along with the crowd because they think that's what they're supposed to do, because they're not even in touch with, most likely, their own sovereignty, their own agency, their own free will thoughts. I mean, they're probably not even thinking for themselves. Why? Why is this such an issue? Back to Sasha's point, because of the love vibration, they don't have access to it, or they're not accessing to it. They're not connecting with their own innate sense of self-worth, which is the love connection to, Christos, Sophia, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, right? So in terms of a practical thing that I think that, we can encourage everyone to do here, and that's, to get into our own heart vibration. And I'm a huge, huge proponent of prayer. And I don't mean prayer in, the dogmatic, like, thank you, baby Jesus. I mean, I don't have any problems with Jesus. I think he's a little bit too idolized for me, to be quite frank, but it's about praying properly. That is to say, the way I do my meditations, when I do them properly. Yes, exactly. And understanding that it's already fulfilled in the moment that you align with it. It's like coming at it from the place where you think God is kind of like your master and you're the slave. Like, oh, please, God, please just like give me this one little thing, versus you're God's child and God loves you and wants you to have all of the love and the protection and all these things. So we can pray for those people that we care about. We can get into our heart space and know that somewhere, somehow, there's some higher power that's going to support them, that's going to guide them, that's going to protect them. And those powers, I'll share one little piece, and then I'll pass it on to you, Ian. I had a friend of mine who was having a hard time getting a job, and he had, got his degree and everything, and he was unemployed for like a couple of years, and he was really starting to get depressed and all these other things. And he asked me one day, because he was kind of spiritual, he wasn't, not my brand, but he was spiritual enough to say, hey, could you pray for me sometime? And I was so honored and moved. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I prayed for him a couple of times. Within a week, he got a job. Why? Why did that happen? Why does that work? Because I didn't do it from a place of slavish begging and like, oh, unworthiness, like, oh, help my friend. I was like, no, I'm going to see him getting what he needs. I'm going to see him fulfilled, see him in the place where he needs to be, and put my heart space in that place. And then boom, within a matter of, you know, days, it manifested. We can offer the same kind of support for any loved ones that we're connected to, that maybe we're not connecting with in the material world. Maybe in the 3D, there's some disconnects. We can go into the heart space. We can go into the 4D. We can go into the astral, where we're sending out love vibrations to others and actually influencing their experience, because we have so much more power in that loving state than we do in any other kind. So if we can just actually send that energy to them, you know, we might be amazed at the results that we can accomplish. And the final thing I want to say about that is, like, you know, the more that we get in touch with the massive miraculous energy that lives within us, the less relevant this, you know, dominator system is going to be, because this is the override frequency, as Laura calls it, right? When we get in touch with the inner universal love source, that can change the whole game.
Beautiful. I have 2 Uranus thoughts before Ian goes. One, Uranus being in Taurus again. Taurus is the status quo and the going along. Well, I'm doing it because they're doing it, right? And so Uranus is shaking that up, shattering that, being like, do your own thing where you would normally do what everyone else is doing. One, and then 2, to answer Laura's question, I actually feel like I'm in a rebirth, because when Uranus went into Aries in 2011 and the Fukushima reactor blew up, I thought it was the end. I truly did. And there was, you know, all this radioactive water being dumped into the Pacific, and they, you know, nuclear chain reaction, like my whole system, that all happened right on my personal moon. The Pluto Uranus square was right on my moon. I could feel it in my body, and I was like, this is it, it's done. And yet no one was tracking it except for a very few activists that had been anti-nuclear activists for a long time. I literally got up, you know, every morning and I meditated, and then I got on the phone with like every environmental organization I could. I'm like, why aren't we bringing every brilliant scientist to the site right now to solve this? Why isn't the whole world freaking out? And to be honest, that was more disconcerting than now, because there was no reflection. It was like, what are you talking about? It's all good. It's over. Nothing happened. You know, there was no radioactive isotopes in California from that. Oh, no. It was such a denial. And it was so different than what I was feeling in my system. Like, I feel like we all did get dosed, and I was getting supplements to move that out of my system and my young daughter's system. And I was meeting with other moms. Like, what do we do here? The culture didn't even blip that there was a problem, and it was crazy making. And I thought it was done. I was like, what's going to happen with all that radiation in the ocean? That's going to kill the Pacific. And, you know, so I thought I was preparing for the end. And so then I was like, wow, that didn't manifest that way. And here we are. Now there really is a restructuring, and that's still pouring into the Pacific every day, but how resilient the Earth is, and who knows what information we were getting that was accurate from that. You know, and I went deep into that rabbit hole. PG&E had built that nuclear reactor against the wishes of the local people, who had a line in the sand that had a stone there that said, do not build below this line because of earthquakes. And PG&E went in and built that reactor, you know? So it's like, I already went into the belly of the beast, and I already thought we lost. It was like that near-death experience. And so now I'm like, wow, it's 2021, the ocean is still living, and people are waking up to what that beast is. And there's this awakening. So in that way, I hear you about the dark night of the soul for sure. And it was a very interesting context to be able to be inside that experience with my personal astrology. You know, my nervous system was just freaking out. And to be like, wow, like what a blessing that we're still here. And now collectively, look at us. We're having these kind of conversations, and people are just like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, seriously, right? I mean, my sort of default is we win the war within ourselves. It's a war on consciousness. We're connected on a DNA level to all the stargates, the planetary circuitry, and, you know, and there's these reversal systems and all these assaults and all these weapons. It's like a really like stupid bully. It's like, seriously? I don't think so. mean, how many times have we died? Like, hello? Yes, the soul still lives on. The only people that we could worry about, we can, you know, spend multi-generational like experiences trying to save, are ones that really don't want to think for themselves and like literally believe that all these things are actually real. And so, yeah, there's the matrix part of it, which to me is like the lower strands of DNA. But when we go up to these higher harmonic universes in our DNA, it's like, it's a great love story. It's all about like returning to the Christ consciousness. It doesn't mean that it has to be like some religious propaganda about the life of Christ and you have to believe this and you have to think this. It's like, what about your own personal experience with these energies within you, you know? And I feel like it can transmute and alchemize like all these horrific assaults. And you know, the mind control machine is just like out of hand. But anyway, I want to be a good interviewer. Well, you did your best, but what do you guys think? I mean, what's your last kind of like download or thought that you want to share before we close? And then, you know, what's your latest thing that people can look forward to? So whoever wants to start.
So if you don't mind, I'll go next. Gosh, there was so much amazing stuff in there. My mind was like, oh, that. And then I was kind of like that old Frogger game, jumping across lily pads of incredible thought after incredible thought. And then I lost quite a bit of it. But there is something that I did want to share that's hopeful that I can tie into what Adam and Sasha both said. Adam's talking about having a meditation tomorrow, and I think that's a fantastic idea. And Sasha's talking about how it's so important because Venus and the moon are coming together to, I think she said a Venus lunar gate. Is that accurate?
I call it the new Venus portal, and it's when Venus
the new Venus portal
moon, and it's usually before the new moon in the morning star. Yeah. Phase.
Awesome. And so I want to do a screen share. So this is going to probably look a little odd. Let's see here if I can do it because it's a Vedic chart rather than a Western chart. So this is it's interesting to me that Western charts are usually shown as a circle and North Indian Vedic charts are shown as a square. So I like to use both systems, although you have to separate them when you're with the rules, but I like to use both to look at similar situations. So you'll see, you almost can't even read it because there's so many planets. There's Sun, Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Moon, and Saturn. Every planet but Mars of the original 7, and Vedic astrology only uses the visible planets, so Saturn and inward, and uses all the classical rulership, such as Aquarius is ruled by Saturn in Vedic astrology. So you see this just absolutely gigantic cluster in sidereal Capricorn. And what's fascinating to me is just how potent this day is. And I was saying to Adam the other day that, and this might have caught his eye of why I'm even in this meeting, that I believe that while I ascribe to the Rudolf Steiner belief that we are past the need for a messianic figure, we're no longer in the age of the messiahs, we're in the age of the individualized Christ consciousness. I absolutely believe that. That doesn't mean that very powerful souls can't incarnate. And as a Vedic astrologer, when you see all these planets together, one of the differences between Vedic and Western astrology is the concept of yogas, by which they mean yokes of destiny. And these are planetary configurations which almost guarantee a karmic result. So one of the things you can do is look at, is this person going to be famous or powerful or whatever? Just look at this it's impossible to overstate how astonishing this is. So I'm going to click over. Look at all these yogas for babies born tomorrow. You can't even fit them all on the screen. So a baby that's born tomorrow at, let's see, what did I have for the time? I wanted to have them all in the ascendant. So a baby that's born tomorrow at 6 a.m. is going to be just like Avatar level. like literal avatar level. Like it's astonishing. And there was a few different times today and then tomorrow. There are souls that are incarnating right now that are going to just absolutely alter the world forever. And it's interesting to me that it's happening in Capricorn, which is the sign of government. And I believe
it's enlightening Saturn. It's like bringing it back to natural and cosmic law. You know, it's the law
exactly. And so the souls that are incarnating today and then tomorrow are going to be, but especially tomorrow, the ones who are born when it's all in the ascendant are going to be just otherworldly, powerful beings that are coming into the world. And as I was mentioning earlier, I'm part of a mystical knighthood that's devoted to Saint Mary Magdalene. And among other things, we are trying to pave the way for these souls that have been incarnating, especially in the last 20 years, that tend to be embodied females. They're not always. There's many incredible male children that have been born in the last 20 or so years. I like to think my son is one of them. He's a beautiful, powerful soul. And when you see the kids today, I mean, the kids today, they're amazing. They're just absolutely incredible. And I look back and I remember, being a kid in the 80s, 70s, mid 70s and 80s. And I think about I can't even describe it. It's not a quantum leap. It's more like a galactic leap. The scope and the scale of it is almost impossible to overstate. And there's souls that are, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
There you go. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say the souls that are incarnating at this time, especially today and tomorrow, are going to be otherworldly powerful. And I believe that they're going to completely change the fabric of the way that the world works. And what we have to do is we have to do our own inner work. We have to hold that frequency. We have to do what we can to create pockets of I don't like to use the word resistance because my God, was that shit co-opted the past 4 years, for fuck's sake. Jesus. Yeah. Sorry. The amount of Trojan horse and appropriation is just, I can't stand it as a lifelong activist.
You're right on. Yeah.
As a lifelong activist, someone who's dedicated to equal rights under the law for all of humanity, the thing that makes me the most upset about current things, speaking of government and the Capricorn influence, is the way that legitimate grievances, groups that have been legitimately shit on by society, have had their movements just captured and used as a Trojan horse. And the thing that's so infuriating about that is that if you're not subtle about how you view that, it's very easy to backslide into old patterns of misogyny. You can see the way Greta Thunberg, this young girl who's, I guess, has autism, has been manipulated into pushing, when I was a kid, environmentalism was like, we're going to protect habitat, we're going to clean up the oceans, we're going to protect species, right? We're going to protect the living structures of the earth. And then sometime in the 90s, it became, we care about a CO2 and we need to do carbon credit, cap trade, bullshit, blah, 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 blah.
No, but
banks.
Agenda using children to steer people. And
exactly. And so children have a right to be upset, but they're being guided in totally the wrong direction. What as far as we know, the most valuable resource on Earth, it's not gold, it's not platinum, it's not rare earths, it's not any of that. It's genetics of all the species on this earth. As far as we know, I'm certain there's life off this planet, but as far as we know, life is fairly rare in the universe. And the beautiful genetic diversity that Gaia created in her garden is just so rich and beautiful. And the thing is that all these technologies that are currently being used to dominate, they don't have to be used that way. We can do things like using genetic engineering to bring back the white rhino from extinction. We have the ability to bring back and heal the earth by working with the earth rather than against her and harnessing all this technology. And so I'm sorry I went off on the little political rant there, but my goodness, the thing that's so infuriating for me is the hijacking of legitimate movements and legitimate grievances, the tokenism, the Trojan horsing, and because my fear is that it will be used to further undercut legitimate environmental movements and things like this. And so I see a very, very, very strong potential for us to go in a much more beautiful and uplifting direction. And in fact, I believe it's destined. I believe it's virtually certain, unless like everyone in this Zoom chat and all like-minded or like-hearted individuals decide to suddenly go, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna get myself a giant thing of blue pills, which I don't even think you can do that. I think there comes a point where you're too awake, you can't go back to sleep no matter how hard you try, because believe me, I was much like the guy in the Matrix who was like, this steak is juicy and tender, and God, I know it's not real, but it's so delicious. I'm like, please put me back in the Matrix and erase my memory, Agent Smith. Like, this sucks sometimes. It's hard. It's really fucking hard being awake and aware, having all these feelings, especially if you're empathic, especially if you care about people and you care about children and the future and family members and all that. And so all we can do at this point is to go within to do our own inner work, and then to find our soul family, to find the people that resonate with us, to create community, whether it's online or better yet in real life, and then to start creating little places where we preserve the sacred knowledge of the ancients. We preserve the old ways. We do things like Rudolf Steiner's biodynamic farming, organic farming. We come together in intentional communities. Of course, be careful about that, because you have to be careful how you structure that. But just doing that, because what I foresee is that this system is it's going to collapse, or we may very well, in a very real sense, diverge to where we're no longer able to even be on the same frequency as this great reset. And we may find ourselves that there's just a billion people all of a sudden on Earth. And where did everybody else go? Almost like, and I'm not subscribing to that, but almost like this rapture idea that the Christians have, meaning that there's just a division in the timelines. And I think that break may be coming soon. And then out of that, from these pockets of people who were beautiful souls who ascribe to the ancient ways, and who also using modern techniques and modern knowledge, because we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Science is a perfectly beautiful thing. What we need to do is have science in harmony with nature. That's what the pre-fall Atlanteans of the Golden Age and what the Lemurians had, and I don't even know how many versions of this global civilization we've had. But what they had was technologies that were much more harmonious with spirit and much more harmonious with the planet. And we can move the culture in that direction. We can harness this incredible amount of knowledge that we have, and we can move things in a more beautiful, uplifting, where we honor difference. We don't need to all be the same. We don't all need to be homogenized. We can say women are different from men, and that's beautiful. And that means that neither women dominate nor men dominate. We work together. We work in harmony.
Well, my favorite, kind of default when I just check in with myself is oneness is diversity and harmony. It's beautiful. Like the web of life. It's what creates ecosystems that can sustain itself, and it would never work if it was just like pulling everybody into like whatever the squirrel wants. Imagine if like the squirrel kingdom was just like dolphins, badgers, centipedes, you need to adopt my, was it squirrel perspective. It's like, no, this doesn't work. AI and any kind of like, and religion has fallen into this trap.
Yeah.
A lot of really good intentioned souls though will be free from that, but it's like the greater ecosystem, as far as I'm concerned, is that.
Yeah. I have a beautiful, oh, sorry. I thought you were done.
Oh, no. Oh, I just really want to hear from you.
No, I couldn't tell if there was another.
Diversity and harmony to me is true oneness. It's
well, that's why, yes, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to read this closing quote, because what you're saying, I'm like so excited by what you shared, Ian, so excited. And I've been really revisiting the work of Fritjof Capra. I never know if I'm saying that right, but he, the book, The Turning Point, I just rewatched the movie Mind Walk, great movie from the early 90s that goes through all the principles of that book. Go see it if you haven't. It is the age of Aquarius. Quantum physics is the age of Aquarius. And so, what he talks about is that we are in a crisis of perception. And this is what I feel. We have all the intelligence to solve all of the problems that we encounter, exactly what everyone's saying here. So I'm just going to read this quote in closing. I am also doing a webinar tomorrow on the Venus Moon Gate. I don't know when people are going to see this, but if you get in touch with me, I can definitely get you a replay of it if you want to learn more about what is this Venus cycle and how to sync with it. So 11 a.m. Pacific time for anyone that wants to do that. And then I'll just read this final quote from Fritjof Capra from the book, The Turning Point. I believe that the worldview implied by modern physics is inconsistent with our present society, which does not reflect the harmonious interrelatedness that we see in nature. To achieve such a state of dynamic balance, a radically different social and economic structure will be needed, a cultural revolution in the true sense of the word. The survival of our whole civilization may depend on whether we can bring about such a change. It's all here.
Well, that's freaking huge. And man, you're holding down like an unbelievable sacred flame for humanity to be able to, connect with. And it's like, I'm so honored and grateful that I got a chance to hang out with you tonight.
Yeah, same, all of you. I'm so lit right now.
Likewise.
All right, so anybody else, before we close? That was so beautiful.
Sure.
Sasha,
Yeah.
and do you guys want to maybe do one-on-one interviews with me? I'm not like
Love that.
Awesome. So yeah, anybody else?
Yeah, I'll just finish up and say, thank you, Sasha and Ian and Laura and everyone for being on this call tonight. I can't even put into words but I know you feel it. So hopefully everybody else watching also feels it too. I actually did watch that podcast, Ian, that you had sent me about Steiner's work, and I couldn't agree more about removing the messianic figure from the external, right? I mean, that's a whole issue that I have with Jesus and like all the idolization that goes on. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within, even greater miracles that ye shall do also, right? I mean, I don't know, again, is he real, is he not?
Here's my no shit moment, like seriously, right? All right, sorry, go back.
It's so imperative, and I'm really glad that Ian, you brought that up. I just wanted to reaffirm that, and that we have that access inside, we have that gateway within, and I think that that's really the key in this Aquarian energy that we're coming to. And Sasha, yes, I did also watch the oh gosh, what is it called? The mind movie. I didn't finish. Yeah, Mind Walk. I didn't finish it, but it is, the Aquarian, quantum physics and all of the interconnectivity, unity and harmony and all of that. I just wanted to offer people a little bit of information about the aspects that we have coming up, just so that there's a little bit of groundedness with the astrology and maybe, what we can expect on some level. I would say, first of all, we also have Mercury retrograde is conjuncting Venus on Saturday, on the 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. So just a fun little fact there. Mercury retrograde always often has some revisiting or reviewing or revising, right? So if things aren't looking exactly as you would like them to right now, hang in there, because things are going to change. In a couple of weeks, on February 20th, Mercury goes direct. And then finally, Mercury will leave its shadow period, which is the same degrees of the zodiac that it went through before it went retrograde, on March 14th. Mercury will come out of its shadow period. So I think, whatever challenges or whatever setbacks that we might be feeling right now, just hang in there until March 14th, because things are going to start to get some forward momentum and lighten up a little bit after then. And then, come the end of March 26th, we have Mars conjunct the North Node, which is really going to give us power and drive. And this is in Gemini, so it's going to be trining with the Aquarian energy. It's going to have a lot to do with communication.
I got that Neptune square. Sorry, keep going. Yeah. And
Right.
and
Well,
Moon in Aquarius.
that too, and it will square Neptune as well. So we're going to be like, coming up against the illusions and the delusions that maybe we were giving ourselves into in the past that we no longer will fly by the end of March. And then come April, we have the Sun, Chiron, and Venus conjunct in Aries in the beginning of April, and we have a lot of energy in Aries in the beginning of spring. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the warrior energy come in. Hopefully the peaceful warrior. Of course, that's up to us. But as far as keeping in touch, you can find me on my website, rawlifeyoga.com. That's like raw food. And I am going to be doing probably a Facebook Live tomorrow to meditate and encourage this sovereignty, override energy where we're claiming our own Christos Sophia, Hieros Gamos union, the fullest potential of our energetic light body, if you will. They call it the homo luminous body, right? We're all one light being in this new evolutionary quantum leap that we're going into. And my next project is this book. It's called Ascending the Narcissism Through Sovereignty: How True Self-Love Heals Human Hatred. And it's an astrological journey. So keep posted for that one. And I'm working on it as hard as I can. I feel like the narrative is so relevant to wake people up from this dominator culture, as you put it, Sasha, so that we can just really reclaim our own sovereignty, because that's what it's all about.
Man, brilliance is just like the sky just unloaded a bunch of diamonds when I listened to you. No, that was freaking amazing. I love you so much, Adam. Thank you for being such a great friend too.
Oh, you're so sweet. I adore you, Laura. You're just a beacon of the brightest light for humanity, maybe, that I know. I just love that you do this work for everyone, and you have been, and you put yourself out there in the public eye, and it's not easy. It's pretty thankless a lot of the time, but yet I think the proof is in the pudding of your work, of how many souls you touch and how many people you inspire. And thank you so much for creating this opportunity for us today to do the same.
Oh, well, my pleasure. I mean, I'm honored.
I should add in there really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, like, we want to hear from you guys. Yes, Sasha.
So as far as the aspects, I'm so glad that you gave some preview, Adam, but just heads up, the first Saturn square Uranus is February 17th. And that really feels like the old guard clashing with the new guardians. This is really where we begin to be in that creative potential of that tension to embody the new consciousness. I mean, there's so much more, but I just wanted to put that one in the mix. And then I can be found at www.venuswisdom.com, or on Facebook, just search me. I do a lot of stuff on my timeline, and you'll find me.
And you have a great following. Regardless of numbers, it's just like, the resonance of everything that you bring forward to the human race is so spot on. And I am just really grateful to spend this time with you. It's like,
me too, Laura. I feel like you are the solar feminine. You're leading with the heart. You're willing to be vulnerable and not know, and show up and shine and be in the spotlight and put forth your truth and be fierce with all of the attacks. It's almost like that's the sign that you're on the right track, right? Yeah. That you're illuminating the darkest shadows. And of course that's going to be the backlash. That's because you're so bright, because your brilliance and your influence, you're using that in such a skillful way to question the reality. And so just so many blessings on you, and protection for you, protection for your family, protection for your heart, to keep going, that we really need your wisdom, and that you use your platform in the way that you do to go to the edges, to bring the people that have the ideas that are not in the mainstream, bring them into center. It's such a gift, and it's such a generosity. So thank you.
Oh, man.
Your big hearts.
Like, I can't even believe you just said that. It's like, I kind of mirrored that back to you. It's like, and that's why we're all coming together right now.
Yeah. We need each other.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that way about you, and it's just like, God, you encourage me and inspire me. And, I have to admit to everybody, some days I'm just like, no, I don't give up. I don't feel defeated, but I'm just like, crawling into that like really crazy space of death cycle. It's like, yeah. You know what?
One quick thing about that dark night of the soul, because I didn't actually mention it to you before. I mean, I don't know, for me, and it shows up in my Vedic astrology too, because I had the Kala Sarpa Yoga, Ian, if you're familiar with that one.
Yeah, that's also
basically,
going on right now.
Yeah, I know. And I just basically got out of mine recently. So the first, it even says, like, my first Vedic astrology reading I found online, it said the first 30 years of this native's life will be hard. Meanwhile, this was on my 30th birthday when I was laid out with lower back injury and I couldn't even move. It was so spot on. So the point I want to make about that is I feel like a lot of the souls who have been really going down deep into the mud, we've gone through that dark night of the soul stuff so that we could prepare and hold the space for other people who are going through it now. So even though it feels like overwhelming, and I know for me, sometimes it feels like, Jesus, it's been 37 years. Is it going to be, it's much better now for me personally. And this past couple of years has been actually, I think, a lot relatively easier for me than most people. And I know there are a lot of other, advanced souls who have talked about having the best couple of years of their life in the past, this craziness that we've been seeing. So I just think that, there is a higher purpose to it, even though sometimes it feels like a marathon, and even though sometimes it feels like we can't go on. I do believe that it's part of our almost like spiritual boot camp training, and that it's because we decided to, do the hard thing so that we could help other people. I believe that's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah.
Boom! Majorly amazing point. Thank you, precious Adam. Go for it, Ian.
Yeah, just to wrap up, my website is www.whitelotusoflight.com, and how I got the name is I actually named my business after my son, and my son did not have a name for his first 5 days on this planet, and the grandparents were all going, "Okay, you hippies, hurry up! Where's that damn name for the kid? What's wrong with you guys?" And the thing is that we must have had like 150 people guess the gender of our child, right? Or sex, whatever. And all of them said girl. 100%. Every family member, every random person who said, "Hey, I want to guess the baby." They would ask boy or girl, and we'd say, "Well, we decided not to find out beforehand." And 100% of people said girl. Now, me and my ex-wife, we both were certain we were going to have a male child. But by the 150th time that people said it was going to be a girl, we're like, well, that's just weird. It must be a girl. And girl names are so easy and beautiful, and you can get really creative and fancy.
Angelica, and
yeah, add 3 Q's in the name. Just go for it. Just go nuts. Let your wild and fancy free. And I was still thinking, I grew up in the 80s. And I was thinking, well, I don't want to have a son I name Sue kind of thing. You know what I mean? I need to be careful if we have a male child.
Is that a Johnny Cash song?
It is a Johnny Cash song. And stuff. He makes his son tough by naming him Sue. So he gets the shit beat out of him all the time and learns to fight. And anyway, so I looked at all the male names, and they were all like, "He who soaks his sword in the blood of his enemies and salts the land and burns the city to the ground. And that'll teach those jerks." The names were just all warlike and horrible and nightmarish. And so we were like, let's just put that to the side and look at these beautiful girl names. And then we had a boy, and we were like, oh shit, we should have had a boy name ready to go. What are we doing? So for 5 days, we just looked through all these different kinds of names. And finally, I saw one and I immediately liked it, and it was Kairavan. And I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And it was Sanskrit. And part of the reason I'd been looking at those names is because, as I mentioned, how I got into Vedic astrology is my ex-wife, she was really into immersed in this Vedic culture and this Vedic background. I mean, she's Jewish, but she was immersed in that background. And so I saw it, and she goes, "What does it mean?" And I was like, oh no. And it means a kind of white lotus that's born in water and blooms at night. And he was born at night in a water birth. And then we realized we had lotuses all over our house, and we also had lotuses on our custom wedding rings.
Major. You guys
and so
holding.
Yeah, and I was just like, holy shit. So his name's Kairavan Sage, which means the white lotus sage. And the reason I love the lotus so much is because the lotus, Laura, is born in the murky, nasty depths. and then as it grows, it winds its way up to the surface. And the apocryphal story of how Zen Buddhism came to be, which is initially Qian Buddhism, was that one of Buddha's disciples was sitting around and Buddha was giving a sermon, and Buddha walked up and he held aloft a lotus and he didn't say anything. And that student got it and smiled, and Buddha said, "You got it." And there was a direct transference. And then that's how they then light the candle, is how they say in the Zen Buddhist. And so I just want to remind everyone that, as I had a mystic tell me once, because I had a very traumatic childhood, he said, the brightest lights go to the darkest places. And there's an apocryphal story also about how after Jesus, since he's coming up a lot for whatever reason, was crucified, that the first thing he did was go down into hell and free the souls. I forget, that's not like, I don't think that's canon, not that I care what the people at the Council of Nicaea said, but there is this factor to where these external forces of darkness, this pressure crushes the coal and turns it into the gem, into the diamond. And you know, you shine really brightly, and you're going to shine even brighter as you go through this rough patch. And again, like I said, 3 weeks ago, I would have been like, you know, just scooping the Ben and Jerry's directly out of the pint of carton. You know what I mean? It would have been bad. I was definitely comfort eating and all the rest. It was just like, I was super, super, super upset, you know, when the whole nonsense at the Capitol happened, and I, you know, could just barely even not vomit from the smell of bullshit, you know, false flag nonsense, obviously the past draconian bullshit. Yeah. And so I went through an incredibly dark period. And part of it was that I got pulled back down into the whole political sphere. And the thing that we have to keep in mind is that there's an emanation of the one, and then it diffuses and it differentiates and becomes the multiplicity. And it goes through the realm of the archetypes and the gods, and then it comes down eventually to the physical space. And where our talents lie is not in changing people in the 3D realm, is another way of putting it, but is to operate at that higher level of creation. And we do the alchemy first within, and then we operate and we create at that higher level, and then it manifests down into the world. And I mean, Adam gave a very concrete way of how that functions, but in Kabbalah, they talk about this a lot. And so just let this grief, this sadness go through you. I will end with one last alchemizing thing. I had someone teach me a practice, which was I used to have something that I called cry baths, where I would sit in a hot bath because that's so comforting for me, and I'd just cry. And I'd cry without attaching a story to it. Now, I would have the traumatic memories come up, and I would just be like, and the floodgates would open up. And anytime I started to go, it's about this girl I like, and she doesn't like me, you know, or whatever my mind wanted to make it about, the trigger, the current trigger in the spiral path that was causing the explosion, right, was really about this deeper, older thing, sometimes maybe not in this life. But I would just let it come through. And by giving it my own loving, present awareness, and not shoving away my inner, ugly, deformed child, my Dickensian street urchin child that was so wounded, because I was like, I can't deal with the grief. Please, just no, shoving it away. I would embrace that child and just let it sob and sob through me. And through my own conscious presence, I could transmute it. And what's happened over time is this underground ocean of pain that I had has started to alchemically transmute into this ocean of peace. Now I still get depressed. I still have terrifying periods of time in which I, you know, I'm like, oh God, Klaus, anal swab is gonna bend me over and give me the anal swab.
It's just like,
you know,
oh, sorry, I didn't mean to shoot you between the eyes.
Right. And I get hella triggered, you know, because of the PTSD and so forth. But there's a piece underneath all that has happened as I've transmuted those layers of trauma. And that piece gets more and more and more to where it's the standard. I used to have depression that would last weeks, months. And now I can get really depressed for a couple weeks sometimes. Like, God, when everything was on fire here, I live in Oregon, and literally there was many days of total darkness because of the fires that were going on, which were suspect, by the way, side note.
I was in
But
Oregon for a long time, and
it
California,
was
and like,
so fucking horrible. I can't even tell you how depressing it was. I love the land here, and I love the forests and the animals, and thinking about the animals burning, you know, and all the just the nightmare of it. I was so depressed, you know. So it's not like I'm immune suddenly to depression. I'm an empath, and I also feel the collective. And right now you tap in the collective for 2 seconds and you're like, no, work and all play makes Jack a dull boy. You know what I mean? It's freaking The Shining times a trillion.
oh my
Is
God.
what you're tapping into with that. And so the collective is just off the chain, you know. It's in total self-denial of sovereignty, and just, you know, wanting to lick, you know, the SS boot of Klaus Schwab, you know, as part of it, like what Adam was talking about, of denying the sovereignty and just the madness of it. And then my own personal life, I have plenty of tragedy. Like, I have beautiful members of my family I know will get that vaccine as soon as they can, and how devastating that is for me. What I can know is that their eternal soul, the Atman, to bring it full circle to that quote you opened with in my bio, that can never be touched, that can never be harmed. It can be derailed for some period of time, but to an eternal soul, they can never, ever, ever be harmed, ever. Even these dark warlocks, even their soul, which is about as damned as can be, even their soul is not touched by it. It just has a bundle of karma and lessons that have to be learned and worked through. And so I want to say thank you,
Brilliant.
Laura, for bringing this all together. Thank you, Sasha, for just the divine feminine frequency you hold. I just want to, like, it's like Calgon, take me away. I want to just bathe in it and just let my pores open up. And Adam, you're
You want to
killing it,
invite me to your
brother.
cry
You're
bath,
amazing.
don't you?
Yeah, I can see you like giving me a massage. It's okay. They're there. And so I just invite anyone who watches this that if you're struggling, just allow yourself to do that and just let it fly.